He was a single cowboy, until his two daughters came home with a beautiful Apache woman. Jack Thompson had spent most of his life surrounded by the endless stretches of the Arizona plains. His small ranch set against rolling hills and open skies was all he had ever really known. He woke every morning just before sunrise, the chill of the desert morning brushing against his face as he stepped out of the modest cabin that had been in his family for generations. The smell of dew-soaked grass and the faint scent of horses greeted him, and he felt a quiet comfort in the routine. Jack had long since accepted that his life would be simple and solitary. People in town often asked him about marriage, but he would just smile, tip his hat, and go back to work. Life for him was about the land, the animals, and the rhythm of the ranch, the breaths. His two daughters, Emily and Sarah, had been the light of his life once. They were small when they left home, chasing dreams that Jack could not follow. Emily had always wanted to see cities and big opportunities, while Sarah was drawn to learning and adventure. He remembered the day they left as if it were yesterday. The wagon rolled away slowly, the girls waving from the back, their laughter carried by the wind.
Jack had stood on the porch, hands gripping the railing, feeling both pride and a hollow ache he didn't know how to name.
Narration. In the years that followed, he would hear from them in letters and occasional phone calls, each one a treasure he kept in a worn wooden box. He missed them terribly, but he told himself he had to stay strong, to keep the ranch running and honor the life he had built. The days passed in their familiar rhythm. Jack would wake, feed the horses, check on the cattle, mend fences, and take care of any tasks that the land demanded. He found a quiet joy in these chores, a peace in the steady work that kept him connected to the earth. Yet there was a loneliness he could not shake. Sometimes in the middle of the afternoon he would pause and look toward the horizon, imagining his daughters riding along the dusty roads, laughing as they shared stories. These thoughts often made him smile, and sometimes they brought tears to his eyes. He did not allow himself to dwell on loneliness too long, for the work always called him back. Neighbors occasionally stopped by to check on him or share a cup of coffee, and Jack always welcomed their company. He enjoyed simple conversations about the weather, the cattle, and news from the nearby town. Still, he often felt like an observer in other people's lives, watching families gather and children play while he remained alone in his quiet cabin. Despite this, Jack had a strong sense of independence. He knew how to take care of himself, and he took pride in running a ranch by himself. Life had taught him resilience, patience, and the satisfaction of self-reliance. But beneath this rugged exterior, there was a heart that still longed for connection, for laughter, for the warmth of family around him.
Evenings were Jack's favorite time of day.
As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple, he would sit on the porch with a cup of strong coffee. The sounds of the prairie filled the air. Crickets chirping, the distant howl of a coyote, the soft rustle of the wind through the trees. He would think of the girls, wondering what they were doing at that very moment, Emily with her fiery energy and endless curiosity, and Sarah with her gentle wisdom and quiet laughter. He imagined them safe, happy, and thriving in their new lives. And though he felt pride in the people they had become, a part of him ached for the simpler days when they ran barefoot across the fields, their small hands slipping into his as they laughed and played. Jack had grown accustomed to his solitude, and he told himself he liked it that way. The ranch needed constant care, and he had grown skilled at doing everything alone. He repaired fences, fed the animals, and tended the land with a diligence that few could match. Each task was a meditation, a connection to the life he loved. The animals responded to him, trusting his steady hands and calm presence. Horses would follow him without fear, and even the most stubborn cattle seemed to sense his patience. This connection to the land and animals gave Jack a quiet satisfaction that no conversation or companionship could ever replace. But as he sat on the porch one warm evening, watching the sun disappear behind the hills, Jack felt a restlessness he could not ignore. Something deep inside him whispered that life was bigger than the routines and chores, bigger than the quiet solitude he had embraced. He wondered if he would ever feel the warmth of family again, the laughter of voices that could fill the house with joy. He imagined his daughters walking through the door, their smiles lighting up the cabin, and his heart ached with a mix of hope and longing. Jack often reflected on the memories of raising Emily and Sarah. He remembered the first day of school, the scraped knees he bandaged with care, the nights spent reading stories by candlelight, and the long summer days exploring the fields together. Brr. Those memories were treasures he carried with him, reminders of the love and bond that time and distance could never erase. He had always been proud of the girls, proud of the way they embraced life and chased their dreams. And yet he knew that the house felt emptier without them, that the laughter and chatter that once filled every corner were gone. Despite the quiet ache in his heart, Jack found small joys in the everyday bursts. He enjoyed watching the sun rise over the hills, listening to the birds awaken, and feeling the wind on his face. The smell of fresh hay, the sound of a horse whinnying in the distance, and the sight of the cattle grazing peacefully brought him comfort. He took pride in the work he did, knowing that the land would thrive under his care. And though he often told himself he was content alone, he could not deny the yearning for connection that lingered quietly beneath the surface. Inspiration. Jack's life had taught him patience, resilience, and the importance of hard work. He had learned to face challenges alone, to solve problems without help, and to trust his own instincts.
These skills had kept the ranch alive and thriving even when times were tough. Yet he knew that no amount of skill or hard work could replace the presence of loved ones.
For he often wondered what the future held. Whether he would continue alone or whether life might surprise him in ways he could not yet imagine. As the night settled in, Jack sat on the porch, gazing at the stars that stretched endlessly across the sky. He thought of the girls once more, imagining their lives far away, wondering when he might see them again. The ranch was quiet, the only sounds the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. Jack sipped his coffee, feeling both the weight of solitude and the quiet hope that life had more in store.
He did not know when or if the next chapter of his life would arrive, but deep down he felt a flicker of anticipation.
Perhaps life still had surprises for him, moments of joy that he had long thought were gone forever. In the silence of the desert night, Jack Thompson, the lone cowboy, held on to the memories of his daughters and the hope that one day they might return. He did not yet know what that day would bring, or how it might change everything he had built, but he knew that the land, the horses, and the quiet rhythm of the ranch would be waiting for them. And somewhere deep inside, he allowed himself to imagine a future where laughter, love, and family might once again fill the empty spaces of his heart. Jack Thompson had never expected that a single day could change his quiet, predictable life so completely. It was a warm spring afternoon when he heard the distant rumble of a wagon approaching his ranch. The sound was familiar, the creak of wheels over the dirt road pulling him from his chores. At first he thought it might be a neighbor or a delivery, but something deep inside whispered that it could be more. His heart thumped in a way it had not done in years, a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. As the wagon drew closer, Jack's eyes widened. Sitting in the back were two familiar faces, Emily and Sarah, his daughters. They were older now, their features more refined, their voices carrying the confidence of young women who had lived and seen the world. Jack felt a swell of emotion that made it hard to breathe. His hands gripped the edge of the porch railing, knuckles white, as he watched the girls wave energetically. For a moment, he could barely move. Years of missing them, years of quiet loneliness, all seemed to wash over him at once. Then he noticed someone else in the wagon, a young woman sitting quietly beside his daughters. She had long, dark hair that gleamed in the sunlight, and her eyes shone with a calm, serene intelligence. There was something different about her, something that made Jack pause and take notice. She smiled politely at him, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Brrr. Jack felt a strange mix of curiosity and caution. The girls had never introduced anyone like this before, and the quiet confidence in the woman's eyes suggested she was not someone to be taken lightly. Emily and Sarah leapt from the wagon, rushing toward their father with the same youthful energy he remembered. Jack dropped his tools and ran to meet them, embracing them with a strength born of longing and relief. Their laughter and chatter filled the air, and for the first time in years the house and ranch seemed alive again. But Jack's attention kept drifting to the woman standing slightly behind them, watching quietly. Her presence was gentle yet commanding, and Jack sensed immediately that she would become important to their lives.
"Dad, this is Island," Emily said, her voice full of pride and warmth.
She's our friend, and someone very special. Island stepped forward and extended her hand, which Jack shook carefully. "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Revenek Pomson," she said softly. There was a grace to her movements, a quiet dignity that made Jack instinctively respect her. Her voice was calm and steady, and Jack could see the honesty in her eyes. He nodded, unsure of what to say at first, but a part of him felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Over the next few hours, Jack learned more about Aylin. She was Apache, born and raised in a nearby reservation, with a deep connection to the land and the animals. She shared stories of her childhood, the lessons she had learned from her family, and the traditions that shaped her. Jack listened with fascination, realizing how much they had in common. Like him, Aylin respected the land, valued hard work, and understood the patience required to care for animals. Slowly, the initial tension began to fade, replaced by curiosity and a budding respect. Emily and Sarah stayed close to their father, sensing his hesitation and excitement. They told stories of their adventures since leaving home, the places they had seen, and the experiences that had shaped them. Jack laughed and marveled at their tales, feeling both pride and disbelief at how much they had grown. Yet he could see that their happiness was connected to Aylin, and he could not ignore the bond between them. Aylin had become more than a companion. She was part of their lives, and now she was entering his own world. As the day progressed, Jack showed them around the ranch, pointing out changes he had made and improvements he had accomplished since their last visit. Aylin followed closely, asking questions and offering thoughtful suggestions. Jack found himself impressed by her knowledge and the gentle way she handled the animals. She approached the horses with care, spoke softly to the cattle, and even helped repair a fence with surprising skill. Jack felt an unexpected sense of relief. She was not just a guest, she was capable, reliable, and respectful of the work he loved. Meals that evening were filled with laughter and conversation. Jack watched as Aylin engaged naturally with Emily and Sarah, her easy presence blending seamlessly into their family dynamic. He could see how much the girls cared for her, how much they trusted her, and slowly, he began to allow himself to trust her as well. He realized that life had a way of surprising even the most cautious hearts. Just when he thought his life was settled into a quiet, solitary routine, new possibilities arrived, unexpected, gentle, and full of promise. Jack also noticed small things about Aylin that made him admire her. She had a patience that matched his own, a quiet strength that did not demand attention but earned respect, and an intuitive understanding of the land and animals that was rare. She asked questions, listened carefully, and offered suggestions without imposing. Jack had spent years alone, and yet he felt strangely comfortable around her. Her presence was calming, her words measured, and her actions thoughtful. He realized that she was not only capable of helping with the ranch, but also someone who could become part of the family he had longed for. Evening fell and the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. Jack, Emily, Sarah, and Aylin gathered on the porch, sharing stories and memories. Jack felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. the feeling of family, connection, and possibility. He realized that life could still hold surprises, that loneliness was not permanent, and that love and friendship could arrive in unexpected forms. Island's quiet presence had already begun to change the atmosphere of the ranch, bringing a sense of peace and harmony that Jack had not realized he had been missing. As the night grew darker, Jack reflected on the day. He thought about the years he had spent alone, the quiet evenings watching the stars, and the longing he had felt for his daughters. And now, here they were, back in his life, bringing with them someone who had the power to reshape everything he had known. He felt a mix of excitement, hope, and a hint of nervousness about the future. Change was never easy, but Jack knew that sometimes it was necessary for growth, for love, and for happiness. That night, as he sat by the fire in the cabin, Jack felt a sense of anticipation. He thought about the bond forming between Aylin and his daughters, and he realized that he wanted to be part of that bond too. Life had always been about the land and the animals, but now it was about people, about connection, trust, and family. He felt grateful for the unexpected turn his life had taken, and he allowed himself to imagine what the future might hold. Perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with laughter, companionship, and the warmth of shared lives. The next morning brought more activity, as Jack and Island worked side by side around the ranch. She asked questions, offered advice, and learned quickly, earning Jack's respect and admiration. Emily and Sarah joined in, creating a sense of teamwork and family that Jack had not felt in years. Each task, from feeding the horses to repairing fences, became an opportunity for connection and understanding. Jack found himself laughing more, talking more, and allowing himself to be vulnerable in ways he hadn't allowed for a long time. By the end of the week, Jack's initial hesitation had completely faded.
Island had become a trusted presence on the ranch, someone who could share both the work and the joys of life.
He had come to understand that family was not only about blood, it was about trust, respect, and shared experiences. The girls were happier, the house was livelier, and Jack's heart felt lighter than it had in years. He realized that the return of Emily and Sarah and the presence of Island had brought him something he had almost forgotten. Hope for a life that was fuller, warmer, and richer than he had imagined possible. As the sun set over the plains once more, Jack sat on the porch, feeling the weight of years lift slightly from his shoulders. He looked at his daughters, now laughing with Aylin, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life had given him a second chance, a chance to experience family in a way he had not thought possible. And though the road ahead was unknown, Jack felt ready to embrace it, knowing that he no longer had to face it alone. The quiet ranch, once so solitary, had become a place of connection, growth, and love. A place where the past and future could meet in harmony. Jack Thompson, the once lone cowboy, understood that his life had changed forever. He felt a spark of excitement, the kind that comes from knowing that new experiences, new friendships, and new love were waiting. And as he watched the stars appear in the vast Arizona sky, he allowed himself to believe that this was only the beginning of something beautiful, something enduring, and something truly meaningful. The days after Aylin's arrival passed in a rhythm that was both new and comforting for Jack Thompson. The ranch, which had once been quiet and predictable, now hummed with energy. Emily and Sarah moved through the fields with renewed enthusiasm, and Aylin's calm presence blended naturally with their efforts. Jack found himself watching them, sometimes from a distance, feeling a strange mix of relief and curiosity. He had expected the return of his daughters to bring happiness, but he had not anticipated the profound sense of harmony that Island brought with her. She had a quiet way of moving through the land, a natural understanding of animals, and an instinctive respect for the rhythms of ranch life. At first, Jack kept a careful distance from Island. He was a man accustomed to solitude and trusting someone new, especially someone who had entered his home so suddenly, was not easy. He watched as she fed the horses, spoke gently to the cattle, and repaired fences with precision. Her skills impressed him, but it was her patience and composure that earned his respect. Aylin did not seek attention or praise. She simply acted with quiet confidence, doing what was needed with grace. Jack realized that she was unlike anyone he had ever met. Emily and Sarah were aware of their father's cautious nature and encouraged him to open his heart.
Dad, Emily said one morning as they worked in the barn, Aylin is special. Just give her a chance. You'll see. Sarah nodded in agreement. She's kind, and she understands us.
And she respects you too, Dad. Just let her in.
Jack listened to their words, feeling both grateful for their encouragement and hesitant about letting go of his long-held independence.
But slowly, he began to notice small changes in himself. He found that he looked forward to Aylin's presence, that he enjoyed her company, and that he was beginning to trust her judgment. One afternoon, a small accident on the ranch brought Jack and Aylin closer. A young colt had gotten tangled in a fence, struggling and frightened. Jack rushed to help, but Aylin was already there, her hands steady and sure as she calmed the animal. Together, they worked to free the colt, moving in perfect coordination. Jack felt an unexpected surge of admiration and gratitude. He realized that Aylin's strength was not loud or demanding. It was quiet, practical, and deeply reliable. In that moment, he began to see her not just as a visitor or a friend, but as someone who could share the responsibilities and joys of his life. Evenings became a time of connection. After long days of work, Jack, Emily, Sarah, and Aylin would gather on the porch or in the kitchen. They shared meals, told stories, and laughed together. Jack found himself speaking more than he had in years, telling stories from his youth, sharing lessons he had learned on the ranch, and listening to Aylin's stories of her family and traditions. He realized that the house was no longer empty, that the walls echoed with warmth and laughter, and that the simple presence of others could bring a profound sense of fulfillment. Jack also noticed that Aylin had a gentle way of guiding the girls. She offered advice when needed, listened attentively, and encouraged them in ways that were supportive rather than controlling. Emily and Sarah respected her, and Jack could see that their relationship was built on trust and mutual admiration. This gave him confidence that Aylin's presence was not temporary. She was someone who could truly become part of the family. He began to think about the future, imagining a life where they all worked and lived together, sharing responsibilities and joys in a way he had never experienced before.
As the days turned into weeks, Jack found himself relying on Aylin more and more.
She understood the animals in ways that amazed him, anticipating their needs and responding with care. She knew how to manage the tasks of the ranch efficiently, and her calm demeanor often diffused moments of tension or frustration.
Jack realized that he had underestimated the value of companionship. Aylin did not replace his independence. She complemented it, making the ranch run more smoothly and his life more meaningful.
One morning, Jack and Aylin were repairing a section of fence together. The sun was just rising, casting a warm glow over the fields. Overhead, they worked side by side in silence at first, the rhythm of their movements matching the quiet hum of the morning. Jack found himself stealing glances at Aylin, noticing the determination in her eyes and the care with which she handled each task. There was a simplicity to her presence that made him feel at ease, and he realized that he was beginning to enjoy the shared work more than he had expected. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of partnership, a feeling that he was not alone in managing the responsibilities of his life. Jack also began to share more personal stories with Aylin, things he had never told anyone. He spoke of his early days on the ranch, of mistakes he had made, and of lessons he had learned through hard work and perseverance. Aylin listened with patience and understanding, offering insights when appropriate, but mostly providing a safe space for him to express himself. Jack felt a bond forming, a connection that went beyond simple friendship or convenience. He realized that trust and respect were growing between them, laying the foundation for something deeper and more meaningful. The girls noticed the subtle changes in their father.
Emily remarked one day, "Dad, you smile more around Aelin."
"It's nice to see you happy." Sarah added, "She makes the ranch feel alive again, doesn't she?" Jack acknowledged their words with a quiet nod, feeling both pride and a little embarrassment. Brr. He had spent so long alone that he had forgotten what it felt like to share his life so openly. Yet he could not deny the truth in their observations. Island's presence had brought a sense of life and vitality that he had long missed. Over time, small traditions began to form. Aelin taught Emily and Sarah a few of the skills she had learned from her family, showing them how to care for animals in ways that were both practical and respectful. Jack watched as his daughters absorbed these lessons, their admiration for Aelin growing with each passing day. He realized that Aelin's influence was positive and nurturing, shaping the household in subtle but important ways. Jack felt gratitude and relief, knowing that his daughters were safe, happy, and learning from someone who valued them as much as he did. One evening, a gentle rain began to fall, turning the dusty plains into a patchwork of wet earth and shimmering grass. Jack and Aelin stood together under the shelter of the barn, listening to the rhythmic patter of raindrops on the roof. They talked quietly, sharing hopes, fears, and dreams for the future.
Jack felt a sense of closeness he had not experienced in years.
The storm outside mirrored the change in his life, a cleansing, renewing force that allowed new growth and new connections to flourish. He realized that Aelin was no longer just a visitor. She had become a trusted companion, someone who understood him and could share the burdens and joys of his life. By the end of the month, Jack had fully embraced Aelin as part of the family. He no longer felt the need to keep his distance or guard his heart so carefully. The ranch had transformed from a place of solitary work into a home filled with laughter, learning, and shared responsibilities. Jack understood that family could come in unexpected forms, that trust and love could grow even in the most unlikely circumstances. He felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that he was no longer alone and that the life he had once imagined as solitary could be filled with connection, warmth, and joy. As the sun set behind the hills, casting a golden glow across the plains, Jack sat on the porch with Aelin, Emily, and Sarah. The air was filled with the soft sounds of the ranch. Horses nickered in the distance, the wind whispered through the trees, and the cattle moved quietly in their pens.
Jack felt a sense of gratitude for the unexpected changes in his life.
Aelin's presence had brought balance, harmony, and a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that life was not just about surviving or maintaining the ranch. It was about sharing moments, building connections, and finding joy in the company of others. Jack Thompson, the once lone cowboy, had discovered that opening his heart to trust and companionship did not diminish his strength. It enhanced it. He had learned that love and respect could grow slowly and steadily, that family could be chosen as well as inherited, and that life's most meaningful experiences often arrived when least expected. As night fell over the plains, Jack felt a quiet optimism, a sense that the best chapters of his life were still unfolding, and that with Aelin and his daughters by his side, the future could be brighter and fuller than he had ever imagined. Life on the ranch had settled into a new rhythm, but Jack Thompson knew that peace was often fragile. Though he had grown to trust Aelin and cherished the renewed closeness with his daughters, he was aware that challenges could arise at any moment. Not all the neighbors were welcoming of Aelin. Some whispered behind her back, expressing suspicion about her presence in the town and on the ranch. They didn't know her, nor did they understand the bond she shared with Emily and Sarah. Jack could feel the tension at times, subtle looks and quiet comments when he visited town or spoke with neighbors over the fence. He tried to ignore it, focusing on his family and the work at hand, but deep down, a part of him felt a flicker of unease. Jack's main concern was the safety and happiness of his daughters. He knew the world could be harsh, and he wanted to protect them while also trusting their judgment. Bert. Emily and Sarah had grown strong, confident, and independent, yet he sometimes worried that their compassion and trust might make them vulnerable to disappointment or judgment. Aylin, with her quiet strength and wisdom, reassured him often, but Jack could not help feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. He realized that life was rarely simple, even when it seemed calm. One morning, as Jack and Aylin worked together to mend a fence near the edge of the property, they encountered a challenge that tested both their skills and their growing bond. Dark clouds rolling across the sky, with a speed that suggested a sudden and severe change in weather. The wind picked up, bending the trees and scattering debris across the fields. Jack glanced at the sky and then at Aylin, who had already begun securing the animals. "Looks like we need to hurry," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the chaos gathering around them. Jack nodded, feeling a surge of admiration for her composure.
They moved quickly, rounding up the horses and cattle, guiding them into safe enclosures and checking each animal carefully.
The rain began to fall in heavy sheets, soaking them to the bone. But Aylin worked without complaint, her movements precise and efficient. Jack found himself amazed at her resilience and skill. He realized that she was more than just someone who shared the ranch with them. She was a partner in every sense of the word. Together, they weathered the storm, both literally and metaphorically, relying on each other's strengths to keep the animals and the land safe.
Meanwhile, Emily and Sarah helped in their own ways, securing smaller animals and bringing supplies to the barn.
Jack watched them, proud of the way they handled themselves under pressure. He saw how naturally Aylin guided them, giving instructions when needed and offering encouragement when their energy faltered. Jack felt a sense of gratitude for her presence, knowing that without her calm authority and skill, managing the ranch during the storm would have been far more difficult. The experience brought them closer together, solidifying trust and mutual respect. After the storm passed, the family assessed the damage. Some fences had been knocked down, a few trees had fallen, and the fields were waterlogged. It was exhausting work, but Jack felt a renewed sense of determination. The challenges of the storm reminded him that life on the ranch was unpredictable and demanding, but it was also rewarding. He realized that facing difficulties together strengthened bonds and allowed them to appreciate the quiet, peaceful moments even more. Aylin's presence had transformed not only the work on the ranch, but also the emotional resilience of the family. Despite the relief of surviving the storm, Jack could not ignore the subtle tension in the town. A few neighbors had commented on Aylin's presence in ways that suggested prejudice or mistrust. Jack felt protective, but he also understood that confrontation would not solve anything. Instead, he focused on demonstrating through action and example that Aylin was trustworthy, capable, and deeply respected by his daughters and himself. He invited neighbors to see the ranch, share meals, and witness the harmony that had developed. Slowly, some of their skepticism began to fade, replaced by respect for Aylin's skills and character. Jack also had to confront his own insecurities. Though he had grown to trust Aylin, he sometimes wondered if he was ready to let someone into his heart fully. He had spent decades alone, relying only on himself and the land. Opening his life to someone new, even someone he trusted deeply, required courage and vulnerability. Aylin noticed his hesitation and addressed it gently. "Jack," she said one evening as they sat by the fire, "trust doesn't mean giving up who you are."
It means sharing your life with someone who respects and values you. Her words resonated deeply, giving him the strength to continue opening his heart.
As weeks passed, life on the ranch continued to challenge and teach them. There were days when equipment broke, animals fell ill, or harsh weather forced them to work long hours. Each challenge became an opportunity for cooperation and growth. Jack realized that Aelin's calm presence and practical skills allowed him to focus not only on the work but also on the emotional bonds that were strengthening within the household. Narration. The girls flourished under her guidance, learning skills and values that would serve them for a lifetime. One particular incident tested the family in ways they had never anticipated. A sudden fire broke out near the edge of the ranch, sparked by dry brush and strong winds. Jack and Aelin sprang into action, coordinating efforts to control the flames and protect the animals. Emily and Sarah joined in, working tirelessly to assist with the evacuation of smaller livestock and ensure the safety of the barn. The fire spread quickly, and tension ran high as they struggled against the unpredictable force of nature. In the midst of danger, Jack felt a profound sense of trust in Aelin. Despair. She remained calm and decisive, guiding them through the crisis with authority and care. Together, they managed to contain the fire before it reached the main structures of the ranch, saving both property and animals. After the fire, as they sat exhausted but relieved in the barn, Jack reflected on what had just occurred. The event had been frightening, but it had also revealed the depth of their bond and their capacity to face challenges together. He realized that life would always bring difficulties, but with trust, cooperation, and love, those challenges could be overcome. Aelin's presence had been crucial, not only in her skill but in her ability to calm and inspire the others. Jack felt a surge of gratitude and admiration for her, understanding more fully the role she had come to play in their lives. The experience also strengthened the girls' bond with Aelin. They saw firsthand how she handled pressure, how she cared for others, and how she remained composed in moments of crisis.
Emily and Sarah respected her not just as a friend but as a true member of the family.
Jack observed this with quiet satisfaction, knowing that the people he loved most were learning valuable lessons in courage, resilience, and compassion. He felt pride and relief, seeing that the family he had dreamed of was becoming a reality. Despite the challenges, there were moments of joy and celebration. After the fire and the storm, Jack and Aelin organized a small gathering on the ranch. Neighbors were invited to share in a meal and see the care and harmony that existed within the household. Many were impressed by Aelin's knowledge, skill, and calm demeanor. The event helped ease tensions in the town, fostering understanding and respect. Jack felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that through patience, hard work, and openness, he had helped others see the value of trust, compassion, and cooperation. As the days turned into months, Jack reflected on the journey he had undertaken. Life had presented him with unexpected challenges, from harsh weather to skepticism and prejudice, but it had also provided opportunities for growth, trust, and connection. He realized that love and family were not always easy. They required effort, patience, and courage. Yet the rewards were immeasurable. With Aelin and his daughters by his side, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and hope for the future. Jack Thompson, once a lone cowboy, had faced challenges that tested his heart, his skills, and his resilience. Through storms, fires, and moments of doubt, he had learned the importance of trust, collaboration, and love. Aelin had become not only a partner in the work of the ranch, but a trusted companion in life. Together, they had proven that even in the face of difficulty, bonds of family and friendship could endure, grow stronger, and create a life filled with warmth, connection, and joy. By the end of this season, the ranch had transformed, not only in its fields and fences, but in the hearts of those who lived there. Jack understood that the challenges they faced had been necessary, shaping their relationships and strengthening the family. Aelin's presence had brought balance, wisdom, and resilience, helping Jack see that life's difficulties could be met with courage and shared effort. And as he watched the sun set over the plains, he felt confident that no matter what came next, they would face it together, as a family united and stronger than ever before. Life on Jack Thompson's ranch had changed in ways he could never have imagined. The storms, fires, and challenges of the previous months had tested their strength, resilience, and trust, but they had also brought the family closer together. Jack sat on the porch one evening watching the sun set behind the distant hills and felt a profound sense of peace. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of hay and horses, and the soft sounds of the ranch surrounded him. The gentle lowing of cattle, the distant nicker of horses, and the occasional chirp of a bird settling in for the night. This was his world, now alive with laughter, love, and companionship.
Aylin had become a part of the household in ways Jack had never anticipated.
She moved through the ranch with quiet confidence, her knowledge and skill earning the respect of both Jack and the girls. She had taught Emily and Sarah new ways to care for the animals, helped with repairs and chores, and brought a sense of calm and order to their daily life. But it was more than just her abilities that had transformed the ranch. It was her presence, her warmth, and the way she seemed to understand each member of the family deeply. Jack often caught himself watching her, marveling at how naturally she fit into their lives. The girls, Emily and Sarah, were happier than Jack had seen them in years. They laughed more, worked with joy, and seemed to thrive under the guidance of Aylin. Jack noticed the subtle ways Aylin encouraged them, offering advice without dictating, listening without judgment, and celebrating their successes with genuine warmth. He realized that Aylin had not only become a companion to him, but also a mentor and friend to his daughters. It was clear that she had a positive influence on their lives, shaping them in ways that went beyond the ranch work. Jack felt grateful, knowing that his daughters were learning valuable lessons about patience, respect, and resilience. One afternoon, Jack and Aylin were walking along the edge of the property, checking fences and ensuring the animals were safe. The sunlight sparkled off the dew-soaked grass, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees.
Jack paused for a moment, taking in the beauty of the landscape and the presence of Aylin beside him.
He realized that he felt a warmth in his chest that went beyond friendship or gratitude. It was a feeling he had long thought was impossible for someone like him, a sense of love, trust, and hope for the future. He glanced at Aylin, who smiled softly, understanding something in his eyes that words could not convey. Jack began to allow himself to imagine a life beyond solitude, a life where laughter and love filled the spaces that had once been quiet and empty. He thought about the mornings they would spend together, tending to the animals and the land, the evenings sharing meals and stories, and the simple, everyday moments that became precious when shared with those he cared about. He realized that Aylin had brought not just companionship, but a new dimension of life, a richness that he had never known. The ranch, once a place of routine and work, had become a home in the truest sense. As the seasons changed, Jack noticed the small, meaningful ways Aylin had integrated into their lives. She celebrated birthdays with thoughtful gestures, helped the girls with personal challenges, and offered Jack advice when he faced difficult decisions about the ranch. Her presence had brought stability and warmth, and Jack understood that life was better for having her in it. He reflected on the years he had spent alone and realized that he had been guarding his heart unnecessarily. Aylin had proven that trust and love could grow slowly, steadily and beautifully, reshaping his life in ways he had never imagined. The bond between Jack and Aylin deepened naturally.
They shared stories of their pasts, discussed hopes for the future, and supported each other through the daily demands of ranch life. Jack admired her wisdom, her patience, and her ability to see solutions where he had only seen problems.
He felt a sense of partnership he had never experienced before, a partnership built on respect, trust, and mutual care. The idea of sharing his life fully with Aylin no longer seemed daunting. It felt right, natural, and deeply fulfilling. One evening after a long day of work, Jack gathered with Aylin, Emily, and Sarah on the porch. The sky was painted with brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple, and the air was filled with the comforting sounds of the ranch at dusk. They shared stories and laughter, reminiscing about the days when the girls were young and remembering the challenges they had overcome together. Jack felt a sense of completeness he had never known, a deep satisfaction in seeing the family thriving, united, and happy. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a realization that life's hardships had brought them to a place of love and stability. The girls were particularly close to Eileen, appreciating her guidance and friendship.
Emily often sought her advice on managing the ranch, while Sarah enjoyed listening to Eileen's stories of her childhood and learning about her traditions.
Jack observed their interactions with pride, seeing how much the girls had grown and how much they valued Eileen's presence in their lives. He realized that family was not just about shared bloodlines. It was about trust, respect, and shared experiences. Eileen had become an integral part of that family, and Jack could not imagine life without her. Jack also noticed changes in himself. He laughed more easily, found joy in the smallest moments, and felt a sense of peace he had not experienced in years. The ranch, once a place of quiet labor, had become a space of shared joy and mutual care. He understood that opening his heart had brought him not only companionship but also growth, happiness, and hope for the future. He no longer feared change. Instead, he embraced it, knowing that life could bring unexpected blessings when one was willing to trust and love. One particularly quiet evening, Jack and Eileen stood together on a hill overlooking the ranch.
The stars had begun to appear, twinkling like diamonds in the clear desert sky.
Jack felt a sense of awe at the beauty of the world and the journey that had brought him to this moment. Eileen's hand found his, and they stood together in comfortable silence, feeling the connection that had grown between them. Jack realized that he had finally found a partner, someone who respected him, shared his values, and brought joy and warmth into his life. It was a realization that filled him with gratitude and hope. The following months brought new traditions and routines to the ranch. They celebrated milestones, helped neighbors during difficult times, and shared in the daily joys and challenges of ranch life. Eileen became a teacher, guide, and friend, not just to the girls, but to Jack as well. Jack found that life was no longer about mere survival or work. It was about sharing experiences, building relationships, and finding fulfillment in the company of loved ones. The ranch had transformed into a home, a place of laughter, learning, and connection, and Jack felt a sense of pride in what they had built together. As time passed, Jack reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought him to this point. He remembered the lonely days, the quiet nights, and the longing he had felt for connection. And now, he was surrounded by the people who mattered most, his daughters and Eileen, whose presence had brought warmth, balance, and love into his life. Jack realized that life's greatest gifts often arrived unexpectedly, in forms he had never anticipated. He understood that family was not only about blood, but about trust, loyalty, and shared love. One sunny morning, Jack watched as Emily, Sarah, and Eileen worked together in the fields, laughing and supporting each other. The sight filled him with joy and pride. He knew that the bond they shared would endure, weathering storms, challenges, and the passage of time. Jack felt a deep sense of contentment, knowing that the ranch was not just a place of work but a home filled with love, connection, and shared purpose. He allowed himself to dream of the future, confident that whatever came next, they would face it together. Jack Thompson, the once lone cowboy, had finally found the family he had longed for but never expected. The daughters who had left to explore the world had returned, bringing with them someone who would change their lives forever. Eileen had brought wisdom, warmth, and a sense of balance, helping Jack see that life could be richer, fuller, and more beautiful than he had imagined. The ranch, once quiet and solitary, had become a place of laughter, learning, and love. And Jack knew with certainty that this was only the beginning of a life filled with hope, companionship, and joy. As the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the fields. Jack sat on the porch with Aelin by his side, his daughters nearby, and the animals quietly settled in their pens. He felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought him here. Life had tested him, challenged him, and forced him to confront his fears and insecurities, but in the end had given him something far greater than he could have imagined, a family built on love, trust, and shared experiences. Brr. Jack smiled, feeling the warmth of the moment and the certainty that the best chapters of his life were still ahead.